that's a very good segue into what I think is probably the primary topic of today's session, is the combination of finding and obtaining the right repertoire and matching up people with repertoire and with each other, coming up with groups, because this is, in my experience too, of organizing kind of play-in type events, this is the big challenge of it. Ginny, you said something very interesting about, or was it you, Phyllis? One of you just said something about choosing the repertoire first. So I think I'd like to open it up, all of our panelists to weigh in on this, because there's two philosophies. One philosophy is this is the chicken or the egg, which comes first. You choose the repertoire, you have some sort of sign up mechanism, people choose which pieces they're going to play, and you have it all worked out. Or do you do a general call out to your community and get as many players interested as possible, get them to sign up, and then do what Susan and I did and spend 7 hours on the phone, being creative and figuring things out. And there's value in each of these, and there might be some of you that do a hybrid of this as well. So Bob, I see you have your hand up. Would you like to start talking about what you do?
Sure. I'd also just like to echo things that Phyllis and Ginny said, that some musicians are purists and don't like instrumental substitutions, and I've found some musicians don't like doubling. So if I have to do that, I like to, try to give people suggestions in advance. I mean, the information in advance, and give them the choice, although that does complicate life, planning life. How I select repertoire, is that the question?
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, not just that, it's a combination. So repertoire first, and then the people, or do you have people sign up first and then choose the repertoire? How do you go about it?
Okay, so actually, I have people sign up first. Then I ask people for suggestions, which becomes usually, to the extent I can use it, a foundation upon which to build. It's particularly helpful to get their suggestions, because then I know at least the person who suggested it, probably it's in their wheelhouse in terms of skill set. It's not overreaching or underreaching. So I don't have to worry about matching them to repertoire based on the difficulty level. And yes, Jenny, the self-rating has a wide latitude in the way people have rated themselves. Fortunately, I've only had 1 or 2 people leave early, but one was in tears. Yeah, so you gotta be forgiving on the difficulty level in terms of what you select, and that's hard for a pianist to evaluate in terms of the strings and the wind players, but get some help on that if you can. I then use the suggestions to the extent I can. They're usually some pretty good suggestions, and they are sometimes some very creative suggestions that are well off the beaten path, which is always fun to introduce people to new niches of the public domain music. Trumpets, yeah, I've had the same problem, Phyllis. You're not going to find a lot of trumpet in chamber music, except copyrighted new music that usually is outside of reach, unless somebody brings it in hard copy. Then I just go with mapping people to the requests, see what kind of instruments I got left over, identify the ensembles that will work, whether it's a wind trio, wind quartet, string sextet, string quartet, piano quartet, that sort of thing, and just start identifying the type of ensembles that we can support. And then I do searches on IMSLIP, IMSLP, to find repertoire suitable for those ensemble types. And I will do instrument substitutions, flutes in particular for violins, at the very end if I have some people loose, but I try to maximize everyone's engagement and try, I can't help but have maybe 2 or 3 or 4 people who are loose one of our 3 sessions for the day, but I try to keep everybody as engaged as possible.
So actually, I would like to weigh in on this. If you're ever in trouble, Georg Philipp Telemann has written for everything. If you look up the works list on IMSL,
You are right.
thousands of people of organizing an ACMP Telemann play-in at some point in the There's trumpets, there's horns, there's oboes. I was for stuff involving oboes, multiple things. So there's, looking into the early music repertoire is a really great solution for that. And I also know that some play-ins, so it seems like, Bob, your type of play-in, you organize people in rooms and you set it up in advance. So before you come, you know which rooms you're going in and you know who you're playing with, and you have the advantage of knowing whether or not you have time or whether you want to practice or just sight read. So that's one model. Some play-ins, I think, are, I don't know if any of you organize play-ins like this, so I thought I'd bring up this model as well. Some play-ins are people play en masse. Like I co-organized one last year for an ACMP event with Arlene Hadjinian, who is a very active pianist and violist here in the New York area. And it was a Brandenburg play-in, which is a very popular thing to do, which Helen Rice, our founder, was famous for her Brandenburg parties. But the way that Arlene and I organized this, it was basically multiples on a part for the strings. So what she did is she created a spreadsheet, a Google spreadsheet. She populated the solo positions herself based on people she knew, and she uses the ACMP directory. And she's played with a lot of people, so she knows their level. She populated those spots, filled it in, and then basically let people fill in their own slots. And if you're a string player, you can just play all night if you want. So that's kind of how she did it. Peter, I'd like to actually ask you, because Peter did an interesting thing during his play-in. I would call your play-in that you did last year a potluck. But he did organize an activity at the end for the string players. We did an en masse Mendelssohn octet. So at the end, the string players could all do that, but because there were multiple rooms, some string players could be in other rooms playing with other people while that was going on. So I don't know, Peter, would you like to describe how you approach that?
Right. So this being my first play-in that I organized, perhaps I was a little naive, but it did kind of work out. I think partly because I used a roster of folks, and I think I mentioned previously, it was about a little over 30 folks that pretty much all sort of knew each other or knew someone who knew someone, etc. So I kind of put the list out there of about 40, 45 people, got the 30 folks that committed, and then with their permissions, sent that list out and said, folks, match yourselves up in advance and pick some pieces and come, as a group and play your pieces together. You don't have to do that. Certainly, if you want to, feel free to come. And I was not playing all day. So I was there at the front desk to connect people. And we had about 3, I think, like hour and a half-ish or so sessions. And then I, mixed and matched people when they came to the desk and said, well, I'm kind of without somebody. But it did seem to work out well.
Yeah, I thought it worked well too. And I learned one lesson from that because I came with a suitcase full of some music as well. The one thing I learned from that, which is interesting, I think if you're going to do a potluck, and it kind of happened the other day at our party at my friend Mary's place as well, I think it's very useful that the organizer has a lot of duets and trios in their bag. Because what happened to us, remember the first session, we had one violist floating around. And I have a whole lot of viola duos here. I wasn't playing either, but if I had had viola duos with me, we could have just gone into a room and played some, viola duets. So I think that's a key ingredient that either you have your participants bring, or as an organizer, if you just have that, and if you think about your different types of instruments that show up, have a bunch of duets that could accommodate a wide range of them. My experience is that you never have enough violins. because you need two for most groups, and you're always going to have way too many violas. So it's like viola duos, wind duos. I remember Peter, you very specifically asked people who played piano or winds to make sure they brought pieces, including their instrument, because the strings are going to show up with quintets and quartets and strings have this kind of advantage that the rest of us don't have. Yeah. So anyway, so Ginny, I see that you would like to weigh in on the potluck approach.
Well, I tried the potluck approach once, and it really didn't work at all because people gravitated towards the people that they knew, which left all the new players with a terrible experience because they ended up playing the one piece that was written for one violin, 3 violas, and 2 cellos. I mean, so you have to have a vast repertoire. I actually have a huge repertoire of string trios when the violinist doesn't show up, so that I tend to have a lot of background stuff. But so the potluck did not work for me, and maybe that was because we have so many people who've been playing for a long time. But every time we have 5 or 10 new people, who you want to have the best experience rather than the worst. So that's why I'm going to screen share if I can. So I don't know, are you seeing this? So this is what I do for each room and each session, so that, and some of them are predetermined because that's the music I have, or that's what someone requested, or it's the only piece written for that particular groupings, which is why I'm not doing clarinets, because your clarinet doesn't show up, no one reads in that clef, so you're a goner. So this takes an immense amount of work beforehand, but it allows me to know that everyone is going to be playing, both the new folks and the old folks. So I'll stop sharing there.
Oh, hi, Jerry.
And everyone has a great experience, particularly of new music that they've never played before.
I'm sorry, I'm right in the middle of a Zoom meeting with a bunch of
some people are stretched and enjoy the stretching. Some people are overstretched and don't. But you can't please everybody. I think the thing you want to do is try to please as many people as possible, and let them know in advance that, every once in a while someone has to double because someone doesn't show up. So show up. I mean, that's the other thing, is how do you get people to, they commit and then they say, oh, I forgot I had to do this. And, there goes your stack of cards. So there's certainly a lot of merit in the potluck approach, but I couldn't get it to work. Wish I could.
Actually, I see Bob has his hand up. Oh, there you are.
Yeah, Ginny and I have exceedingly similar experiences and approaches. I will spare you my chart that is almost exactly the same type of thing as hers. I try to move people around amongst ensembles so that it exposes people to the new, everybody gets to know each other as much as possible. So it's a round robin. We do short socials for 30 minutes, not with refreshments. Never tried a potluck. I'm not sure I'd want to try to do that. That sounds too complicated for me. But yeah, there's that habit of the people who know each other always gravitate. So if you're going to go that approach, of course, we're talking large gatherings here. For the smaller folks, it could be substantial. Smaller groupings, it could be substantially different. You need to have somebody who sort of greases the wheels and goes out and introduces, sort of gets the conversation going.
Excellent. So actually, this would be a good opportunity, I think, for Michael to show us. So Michael has some elaborate charts. And you also mentioned your idea of this play and card game. I would love to know exactly how that works, because I think if you could show us some of yours and explain that. And also, Ginny, I think you said you have a dance card approach as well. So Michael, do you want to share with us how, actually, especially since you're a wind player, I think it's very interesting to have you here, defending the rights of wind players at play-ins.
Yeah.
to.
Of course, it's more difficult to have combinations from wind players and string players. If you are only string players, it's quite easy, I think. And with these other instruments, it's, well, I give my screen. Can you see my cards?
Yes.
Yes. I made 3 sets of cards with several colors. Each instrument is a color. Flute is yellow, the oboe is light orange, the clarinet is dark orange, the horn is green, the bassoon is brown, and so on. And well, for every player I have a card, and then I mix these cards up as long as every player is in a group, in an ensemble. At the bottom, you see all the cards of the 15 players we were at last Saturday, and above that's a second set mixed now in 3 groups. The left one is a wind quintet. Right of that is a string quintet, and above all of them is a piano quintet. So these instruments were it was an easy way to combine 3 quintets. And for the next session, I mixed it up a little bit so that there was a quintet with 4 wind players and the pianist. I played Mozart 452. I was left as a flutist, and I combined myself with 3 string players, so we could play Mozart flute quartet, and the others played I don't remember quite well, for 2 of them had to leave. So these cards are the possibility to see where every player is, in which group he is, and is there someone left or not. And I mix it up as long as necessary so that everyone gets his place.
So how do you
Would you
make those?
understand that?
I understand it now. So with cards, how do you handle the repertoire issue? So you now have a cards per instrument, so you can
I
make.
have cards for instruments and players, yes, and the repertoire. Well, we do it this way that everyone declares in advance which piece he wants to play, and I list these pieces up, and I'm looking, well, which pieces could be made, which instruments are necessary, and which piece is very intensively wished. So those should be made. And as we have several sessions, I try to get it this way that everyone at least gets one chance to play with a group one of these pieces he is very fond of.
Okay.
And the other players, well, are to play together with those who are the piece bringers. That's the way.
You, at the end of your play-in, do you ever have a large group all playing together? Or is it always just in different small groups and then some social time in between?
We start with our overture with all together. I try to find a piece where all can play together, we had Bach piano concerto, and what was the other one? I don't know. This time we tried a no net, for we had this string, this wind quintet, and the strings were doubled. Unfortunately, it was a cacophonia music I chose. I didn't know it. So it was fun to play together, but it was not fun to make this music, just this piece. We had Reinberger in the in der Hinterhand. We could have played Reinberger, but the time was over, so we divided up into the ensembles to play our quintets.
Okay, good. I see Peter has raised his hand. He is now on a cell phone.
So I just thought I'd add in specific to that question, as since you were there, you probably remember, Stephanie. As much as I'm kind of sort of opposed to doubling on parts, we did end the playing that we had with a really fun reading of the Mendelssohn Octet, which was a total blast. Basically, everybody joined in. We did have a very large room. It was more like a concert hall. And it was just a really nice way to sort of wrap up the day. And it's something that we had bookmarked in advance for everybody. So there was refreshment time before. Everybody had a chance to sort of debrief and connect a little bit with new folks from the entire day, and then everyone played through the Mendelssohn.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
If you've got a good first violinist,
or two or three of them.
Actually, that's a question I have. So when you have, because Ginny, you mentioned people that come that are not the greatest sight readers. But in the spirit of inclusivity, which is a very important part, I remember Bob was talking about congenial, non-competitive, I forgot the other C, watch the video. But is doubling, for example, a very good way to potentially give an opportunity for someone to play that's not the greatest sight reader? Like they could be sitting next to someone playing the same part that can kind of help them follow along?
Yes,
Or-
that's the only time I deliberately double. And I do it with the player's permission, who say, I've never done this before, I'm not really sure. So I said, we'll play alongside of John, who's really good. And or I assign them to the last, the fourth violin part in the Mendelssohn or something where the thing's not gonna, in an octet, if you miss one part, it may not be so bad as in a trio or a quartet where they're totally lost. So if I don't know a player, and I suspect maybe they're not so good. But I had a question of Michael. I didn't understand who actually makes the group. Do you make the group so that you have the repertoire that they play, or what if does the group make the decision that they're going to have, I'd like to play with 2 flutes and 7 violins, but there's no music for it?
Yeah, you have to divide up these musicians to 2 flutes and 7 violins. That's not possible, of course. I make the groups considering as many pieces as possible that were brought by the musicians. Mm-hmm. And I have to choose as long as necessary to group these musicians to that point that it fits.
So Ginny, this might be a good moment to screen share your dance card. And so we've seen Michael's card game. You've created a dance card. If you would like to show that to us and sort of walk us through it, and also when I saw it myself, I was curious if you populate the dance card for each participant, or if they do it, or if they sign up on each other's dance cards.
Let me see, did I get out of here? I have to screen share. Well, I make it, it's not like Michael's where they come with, they should have it all. Where is it?
Oh, so it's like Bob's, where they already know who they're playing with.
Yes, yeah. So it's just, it tells them where to go, who they're playing, what they're playing.
Oh, I
And yeah, if something falls through, then they have a chance of possibly finding somebody else. But it's just a mechanism of communicating to them where they're supposed to be at any one session.
Okay, so it's just to orient them.
Yeah.
Susan's applauding that. Or was that a hand raised? I think it was a hand raised. Okay, Susan would like to comment.
Sorry. Well, this dance card thing made me think about the Bennington Chamber Music Conference. I don't know if any of you have been to it. Now they're at Colgate, but if you're organizing a thing where the groups aren't all decided in advance, there are a couple of things that they do there because like free play is a very big part of the agenda there, to try to ensure that everyone ends up getting to play in groups. And so these things might actually be useful for play-ins. One of them is new people have a special color. So they do use like name tags. So new people have a special color, and it's and there'll be moments when everyone tries to get a new person into their group. So that might be something that could be used at a certain for a certain part of the plan, is make sure that you have at least one person in your group that you do not know. Another thing they do is for experienced people, those people can draw a name of someone who's not experienced, and then it's their responsibility to put a group together that includes this new person who doesn't know anyone. And then they also have a kind of a dance card thing. Everyone gets a card kind of at the beginning of the week with the times that might be available for doing sight reading. And then as they have people to play with, they can fill in their card as they go along. So, that's over an entire week. For just an afternoon, there won't be as many possibilities. I will also say that they have a very big library of chamber music. So if a group gets put together, that's like a reasonable instrumentation, there's a good chance that there will be some music. And then people also bring music with them that they're interested in playing, and they look for people to do it. So just a lot of kind of cool ideas. I think they've been doing this for very many years and have thought about these issues of trying to integrate new people into communities where a lot of people do know each other, and trying to create some mechanisms to ensure that the new people get included in things. And I will just say one more thing, which is I went to a kind of mix and match, chamber music mix and match thing one year, where it was sponsored by the Capital City Symphony. And they did have a potluck dinner as part of it. And they had a big pile of music. And yes, like all the string players went off to play Brandenburgs together, and it's very annoying for me as a pianist. But a clarinetist and a cellist came up to me and asked if I would play the Brahms clarinet trio with me, and then I played with them for the next 5 years. So, that can work too. And there are just a lot of different ways of doing it that can work.
I just saw an interesting comment from Mark. Mark, do you want to actually unmute? And I'm just going to spotlight you for a sec. Mark mentioned something about the George. Hi, Mark.
Yeah, hi. Peter Hildebrandt, whom I think was on one of the boards of ACMP at one point, has held for a number of years a weekend, usually held at a college campus, a weekend of chamber music players. He restricts the numbers based upon trying to make sure he has enough but not too many. of each instrument. So it's primarily, but not exclusively, strings and winds. I mean, we've had a theremin and so on. But there are no organized groups. Peter has this huge library, plus he sets up a couple of printers with computers, so you can go and download something from IMSLP, and you change every hour, and you literally have a dance card, and you have to find the people to play with. And if you have no one, you just go to the central area, and someone comes in and says, I'm looking for a violist, I'm looking for a flute, and you pick your music. There are, in a sense, prearranged pieces. If someone wants to do a no-net, they'll put up on the board that I want to do a no-net at 10 o'clock on Saturday morning, and puts the various parts there, and you sign up. And even for, I mean, I went for the first time about 5 years ago, and even for a newbie, I found it not difficult to find people to play with and play as many hours a day as I was capable of. But it is a totally, it's sort of organized chaos, but it is totally free. I mean, I came there, you know, wanting to do, to play something with people that I knew, and I brought music with me. And so again, it was, but it was something that I put up on the board, and, you know, I wanted to play a clarinet quintet with a friend. So I brought the music and put it up on the board, but you know, I had to find another violin and a viola and a cello, cellist to do it. But this is a fun weekend, and one can play endlessly and play a lot of new music, and doubling, you know, doubling is allowed. I mean, it really depends upon whether the, you know, whether the people you're playing with have any problem with that. But you end up playing a lot of music that I can't play at home, because I can't find a clarinetist, I can't find a flautist, or whatever. I do play on Jamulus, but it's a way of playing music that I can't play because I can, you know, I only have access to a string quartet and a string trio.
That's excellent. That's great feedback. I've heard great things about that weekend. So I'll have to ask Peter more about his mechanisms.